High fire starters. Today's story is proof that a no doesn't mean the end. It might just be the universe pointing you toward your real beginning. So without wasting a heartbeat, let's dive into this powerful journey. Part 1. What if that no was the greatest gift? Have you ever had your entire world flipped upside down by just one word? No. It's sharp. It's brutal. It's final. That one syllable can shatter weeks. No, months of effort, hope, and dreaming. You build yourself up, pour your heart into something, believe with all your might, and then boom. You're stopped cold in your tracks. You applied for that job, the one that made your heart race. You rehearsed every answer, curated your resume like a masterpiece, pressed your shirt, polished your shoes, walked into that room carrying every ounce of belief you had left in you. And then it happens. Not even a phone call, just a cold, templated email. We regret to inform you. Your heart sinks. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts spiral. Was I not good enough? Did I say something wrong? Why even try next time? It feels like someone slammed the door on your future, and you're left standing outside in the rain with nothing but questions and the bitter taste of rejection. But stop. Take a deep breath. Now listen to this. What if that no wasn't the end of your story? What if it was the best thing that could have happened to you? Because here's a truth most people learn too late. Sometimes rejection isn't a wall. It's a turn, a divine detour, a cosmic rerouting of your life, not to harm you, but to place you exactly where you were meant to be. Rejection isn't a failure. It's a redirection to something better. Let that sink in. See, life isn't cruel. It's calculated. It knows what's on the other side of the doors you can't yet see. And sometimes the only way to move forward is to be pushed off the path you were so sure was right for you. And that's where this story begins. Not with success, not with applause, but with silence, with heartbreak, with an unanswered prayer. Meet Taylor. Taylor wasn't just passionate. He was obsessed. Since he was a teenager, he dreamed of becoming a product designer at one of the top tech companies in Silicon Valley. He didn't want to just make money. He wanted to change the world through innovation. After years of schooling, sleepless nights, failed prototypes, caffeine-fueled hackathons, and unpaid internships, Taylor finally landed an interview at his dream company. It was the big leagues, the moment he had visualized thousands of times. This was the call he'd been working toward for a decade. He walked into the interview room like a man on a mission, confident, focused, radiating hunger. He crushed the technical questions. He made them laugh in the cultural round. And when he walked out, he felt that warmth you only get when your soul whispers, "You nailed it." For 3 days, he couldn't sleep. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart skipped. And then the email came. "Dear Taylor, thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, after careful consideration," and just like that, everything collapsed. Not just his dream, his identity. He didn't cry. Not at first. He just sat there staring at the screen like it was written in a language he didn't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not after everything he'd given. Not after how perfect it felt. But here's where things got interesting. Instead of sinking into self-pity, something strange stirred inside him, a quiet, unfamiliar kind of clarity. Not comfort, not relief, but the beginning of a different fire. That night, Taylor went for a walk. Not to think, but to breathe. The city felt louder, colder. The world didn't pause for his pain. He stopped at a small bookstore to escape the noise. Inside, tucked between two forgotten shelves, he found a worn-out book with a cracked spine titled, "The Road You Didn't Choose." Curious, he opened it. The first quote he read stopped his heartbeat. Sometimes the universe answers your prayers with silence because it's working on something louder. He closed the book, smiled painfully, and walked back home. That one line didn't erase the pain, but it shifted something deep. What if he was so focused on that door that he couldn't see the entire building collapsing behind it? That rejection, that no, it wasn't just a decision made by a company. It was the universe putting a hand on his shoulder and saying, "Not here, not now, not this, but just wait." Let's be real. Rejection hurts like hell. But buried inside, it is a rare kind of magic. Because rejection strips you down, tears away the pride, and leaves you with something priceless. Truth. The truth about what you really want. The truth about how much you're willing to fight. The truth about who you are when the applause fades. Taylor didn't know it yet, but that email was the beginning of the most important chapter of his life. One that wouldn't have been written if he got that job. Because sometimes the no you're cursing today is the thank God you whisper a year from now. Part 2. Taylor's Fall and Rise. Taylor wasn't just a dreamer. He was a fighter. But even fighters have moments where they fall and the world forgets their name. Before the job rejection, before the tech dream, there was music. Long before resumes and interviews, Taylor's first love wasn't a career. It was a guitar with a broken string and a voice he wasn't even sure people would like. At the age of 9, he picked up an old, dusty guitar from his uncle's garage and taught himself how to play by watching YouTube videos. His fingers bled, his voice cracked, but the sound gave him life. By 16, Taylor wasn't just playing music. He breathed it. He poured his soul into every lyric. His journal was filled with heartbreak, hope, and hidden dreams. His songs weren't polished. They were raw, honest, and real. They sounded like the truth. His truth. Everyone around him said the same thing. You've got something. Keep going. You'll be big one day. And so he dreamed. He dreamed of performing on stages with lights so bright they felt like the sun. He dreamed of hearing a crowd sing his lyrics back to him. He dreamed of getting into a top music school where his talent could be sharpened like a blade. So he applied. Everywhere. New York, LA, Boston. Every program he could find. He sent in audition tapes, wrote passionate essays, even flew out for live performances. He did it all. But every time, the answer was the same. You don't have what we're looking for. One line. Cold. Empty. Final. It broke him. He stopped playing. He put his guitar into the bed. He muted himself, like a singer who forgot he had a voice. Weeks passed, then months. He didn't sing in the shower anymore. He didn't hum when he walked. It was as if music had packed its bags and walked out of his life. And then came a coffee shop. It was a tiny place, hardly noticeable from the street. Taylor had taken the job just to keep his mind busy and help pay bills. He showed up every day, wore the apron, took orders, and smiled like he was okay. But he wasn't. One evening, near closing time, Taylor was wiping tables alone. The shop was nearly empty. Music was playing low on the speaker, some soft acoustic track, and without realizing it, Taylor began to hum. Just softly, almost like a whisper. But someone noticed. A customer, an older man sitting alone by the window, looked up from his book and said, Is that your voice? Taylor froze, cloth in hand. Yeah, just a habit. The man tilted his head. Why aren't you performing? Taylor laughed, half embarrassment, half pain. Guess I'm not good enough. The man didn't smile. He leaned forward and said something Taylor would never forget. Sometimes the world can't see your light until you shine it in your own way. Taylor stood still. Those words hit like a lightning bolt to the chest. Shine it in your own way. That night, Taylor went home, sat on the floor, and pulled out his guitar. Dust covered the strings, and it was slightly out of tune, but it still remembered his fingers. He didn't know why he was doing it. There was no plan, no audition, no deadline, just a voice inside that said, try again. He recorded a video. One take. No edits. Just him sitting cross-legged on his bedroom floor, playing a song he wrote during one of his lowest nights. He uploaded it to YouTube, typed a simple title, "For anyone who's been told they're not enough," and went to bed. The next morning, the video had 34 views. Not thousands, not viral, but 34 real people had clicked, and that meant something. So he posted another one, then another. A week later, someone left a comment. This made me cry. I don't know who you are, but thank you for this. Then another. It feels like you wrote this about my life. And another. Your voice is what my soul needed today. Taylor didn't get accepted into a prestigious music school, but he got accepted into people's lives. Not by fitting into their mold, but by breaking it entirely. He began to realize maybe he wasn't meant to follow the path everyone said he should. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be trained or shaped into something polished. Maybe his power was in his rawness, in his realness. The world doesn't need more perfect voices. It needs more honest ones. The offers started coming in, not from schools, but from indie producers, event organizers, podcast creators, and even small labels. But more importantly, Taylor was healing. Every video wasn't just a performance. It was therapy. Every comment, a reminder that someone out there needed his voice as much as he did. One night, staring at the glowing screen and watching his subscriber count tick upward, Taylor whispered to himself, "They didn't see what I was because I hadn't shown who I am." Rejection didn't destroy him. It revealed him. And that was just the beginning. Part 3, when redirection turns into revelation. Months had passed since Taylor uploaded that first video. The one that barely cracked 30 views, but cracked open his soul. Since then, his journey had shifted in a direction even he couldn't have predicted. What once felt like a dead end now looked more like a hidden entrance. Not loud, not paved, but real. And then came the invitation. It wasn't flashy. No red carpet. No commercial hype. Just an email from a friend of a friend who'd seen one of his YouTube videos and said, "There's this indie festival happening next month. Want to perform?" It wasn't Madison Square Garden. It wasn't Lollapalooza. But for Taylor, it was everything. The venue was a converted warehouse on the edge of the city. Exposed brick walls, strings of lights hanging overhead, and a makeshift stage built from old pallets and plywood. There were no VIP passes, no producers taking notes, no industry gatekeepers judging from the back row. Just a crowd, real people, some in ripped jeans, some barefoot, some with tears already in their eyes before a single note was played. Raw energy, that's what it was. No filters, no pressure, just presence. Taylor stood backstage, heart pounding, fingers trembling around the neck of his guitar. He looked out and saw them, people waiting, not for perfection, but for truth. He whispered to himself, play like no one's watching. Sing like it's your last chance. And then he walked onto the stage. The first few chords were shaky, but his voice didn't crack. It soared. He played original songs, some that never made it past his bedroom walls. Lyrics soaked in rejection, stitched with resilience. The crowd leaned in. Then they sang back, word for word. Taylor's eyes widened as he realized they knew his songs. These weren't just strangers. They were echoes of his own story. People cried. People danced. People held hands, lifted phones, and closed their eyes. And in that small, cluttered, beautifully imperfect space, Taylor let go. He didn't play to prove anything. He played to release something. Something that had been buried under years of silence and self-doubt. And that's when it happened. After the set, while Taylor was still drenched in sweat and adrenaline, a woman approached him. She looked professional, sharp, but not intimidating. She didn't lead with a business card. She led with her eyes that had seen something rare. I'm with Emberlight Records, she said quietly, offering a hand. We're an independent label that believes in artists who don't just perform, but speak to the soul. You did that tonight. Taylor blinked, speechless. She continued, you broke every rule we've seen. No formula, no safe play, just heart. Your pain became your poetry. He didn't say yes immediately. He didn't have to, because in that moment, the past made sense. All the rejections, all the closed doors, all the silences that used to scream, not enough, they weren't punishment. They were protection. Sometimes the door closes, not because you're unworthy to enter, but because what's behind it isn't worthy of you. If Taylor had been accepted into those music schools, he might have been shaped, trained, and polished into someone else's product. He would have fit a mold, a model, a box, but he wasn't meant to fit. He was meant to break the mold entirely. This indie label didn't want to change him. They wanted to amplify him. They didn't ask him to sound like anyone else. They wanted him to sound like the truth. Taylor signed with Emberlight a few weeks later. Not because it was his only option, but because it felt like a home that welcomed the bruises, the flaws, the scars. A label that didn't ask him to perform, but to bleed artfully and unapologetically. And suddenly, all those nights when he questioned if he was good enough, all those mornings when he stared at the ceiling wondering what the hell he was doing, they became part of the foundation he now stood on. The universe doesn't say no to hurt you. It says no to push you where your yes truly lives. He finally understood. That painful no from every audition, every school, every opportunity that slipped away, it wasn't life denying him. It was life directing him, redirecting him towards something deeper than approval, something real, something wild, something his own. And the beauty of it all, he didn't get discovered because he begged for a chance. He didn't win because he followed the rules. He won because he broke them. He shined, even when no one was clapping. He created, even when no one believed. He kept singing, even when the world told him to shut up. And now they listened. Taylor stood backstage before his next gig, this time in a venue triple the size. The lights were brighter, the crowd louder, but his heart, it was calmer, because he knew one thing now with absolute certainty. Rejection isn't the enemy of your story. It's the author of your redirection. And sometimes that redirection turns into revelation. Part 4, the pattern behind every no. Let's pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and rewind your life. Not just the highlight reel, but the real moments. The ones that cracked you open. Go back to that job you didn't get, the relationship that crumbled, the dream that slipped right through your fingers. Now look at where you are today. Seriously, look. You're still here. You're breathing. You've grown. And whether you realize it or not, some of those closed doors weren't tragedies. They were rescue missions in disguise. That person who left you without warning, that company that said you weren't the right fit, that school that said you didn't have enough talent, they weren't pulling you down. They were pushing you away from the wrong things. Rejection is not a wall. It's a mirror showing you who you are and who you're not meant to be with. Let's bring it back to Taylor. By now, his music was reaching thousands, soon to be millions. His songs weren't charting because they were trendy. They were resonating because they were real. And real always finds its audience. But here's the thing. Taylor didn't become powerful because he succeeded. He became powerful because he learned how to interpret failure. See, there's a pattern behind every no, a silent, sacred pattern that most people never take the time to notice. Every time Taylor was told he wasn't good enough, every time he was passed over, forgotten, ignored, it was like the universe was quietly saying, "Not here, not yet, but trust me." And that pattern, it wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Each no redirected him toward a life that fit him, not a life he had to squeeze himself into. Rejection isn't failure. It's feedback from fate. And Taylor began to see that not just in his own life, but everywhere. He started mentoring young musicians, some barely older than teenagers, showing up with trembling hands and cracked voices, still healing from their own rejections. He'd sit with them, listen to their stories, and say something simple but seismic. "I know what it's like to be overlooked, but I also know what happens when you stop needing to be seen by the wrong eyes." These weren't just motivational words. They were battle scars converted into wisdom. One evening, after a performance in Austin, a boy named Eli approached him. 17, nervous, eyes full of fear and fire. He handed Taylor a flash drive. "These are my songs," he said. "I got rejected by 3 music schools this month. I'm thinking maybe this isn't my path." Taylor looked at him and smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. "You're exactly where you need to be," Taylor said. "Because now, for the first time, you're about to write something that no school could have ever taught you. Your truth." That conversation lit something in Eli. A week later, Taylor shared Eli's song on his channel. It blew up, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest, unfiltered. Raw is always louder than polished. Taylor kept seeing this pattern unfold again and again, not just in music, but in people's lives. A woman emailed him saying, "I didn't get the publisher deal I dreamed of, so I self-published. And now my book has helped over 20,000 survivors of trauma." A man wrote, "I didn't get into medical school, so I started a clinic in my neighborhood that offers free healthcare once a week. We've helped over 1,000 patients in 2 years." These weren't just stories. They were proof. Proof that rejection doesn't stop you. It starts you. The pattern is clear. First comes the fall, then the silence, then the search. And if you don't give up, if you stay open and bold, comes the rise. Every closed door whispers a question. Will you settle, or will you shift? Taylor could have settled for silence, for bitterness, for shrinking himself to fit back into those old boxes that never saw him. But instead, he shifted. He made peace with rejection. He started thanking it, because without it, he never would have discovered his own rhythm, his own lane, his own voice. And he wasn't alone. His fans, now a global community, didn't just see him as an artist. They saw him as a mirror, a reflection of every person who had ever been told no and still stood up. People began sending in their own stories of redirection, stories where fate had blocked one road only to reveal another. Taylor began sharing them in his performances, weaving their words into his songs. The stage became a cathedral of comebacks. He sang one night, "I was denied, but not destroyed. I was unseen, but not erased." The crowd erupted, not just in applause, but in recognition. They weren't clapping for a song. They were clapping for themselves. For every time they got back up. For every no that had led to something better. And that's the power of seeing the pattern. When you finally stop asking, "Why didn't they choose me?" and start asking, "What am I now free to choose for myself?" That's when you level up. That's when your pain becomes your platform. That's when your rejection becomes your revolution. So pause again right now. Think of the last time life told you no. Maybe you're still aching from it. Maybe it still stings. But ask yourself, what if that wasn't the end? What if that was the divine blueprint to build something wildly, beautifully your own? The pattern doesn't lie. And Taylor's story? It was never about just one person. It was about all of us. You weren't buried. You were planted. Now grow. Part 5. From Rejected to Respected. Own your redirection. Taylor now stands on stages where he was once laughed off. But he doesn't carry bitterness. He carries truth. No fake smiles. No sugar-coated speeches. Just raw, unfiltered experiences that light a fire in those who've been told they'll never be enough. He doesn't wear his pain like chains anymore. He wears it like armor. He begins every talk the same way. "I wanted to be accepted so badly, I forgot who I was. But when they rejected me, they accidentally handed me the keys to my real self." At first, rejection crushed him. The silence after auditions. The "you're not what we're looking for" emails. The fake smiles of the industry insiders who called him too different. But those weren't endings. They were reroutings. The detours that led him to his destiny. He started writing music alone in his room. Not for fame. Not for fans. Just to breathe. Just to cope. And that's where everything changed. The songs weren't perfect, but they were honest. They weren't polished, but they were real. And slowly, the world started to listen. Today, his YouTube channel isn't just a place to post videos. It's a sanctuary for the misunderstood. Millions subscribe not just for music, but for truth. His songs aren't just tunes. They're therapy sessions. People play them at 2 a.m. when their world feels like it's falling apart. They find comfort in the cracks of his voice, strength in the depth of his lyrics. And Taylor? He never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. That's why he answers messages personally. That's why he walked backstage to hug fans who say, "Your story saved me." Because he knows what it's like to need someone, anyone, to say, "You're not alone." Taylor wasn't built by applause. He was built by absence. Absence of support. Absence of approval. Absence of ease. And from that void, he created a voice that couldn't be silenced. To those watching, feeling broken by rejection, you're not at the end. You're at the beginning of something sacred. Maybe the no you received wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was protection. Maybe it was God fate, the universe, or even your own soul, saying, you were meant for more than this. The truth is, not all closed doors are tragedies. Some are gifts, some are shields, and sometimes the best door is the one you build with your own hands, from scratch, with blood, sweat, and the pieces of every time you were told you can't. When Taylor finally stopped chasing validation, he discovered value. When he stopped begging for inclusion, he built his own space. Not just for himself, but for every person who's ever been told to sit down, stay quiet, or try something more realistic. Here's what rejection taught him. You don't have to fit into matter. You don't have to be chosen to be great. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You need to believe in you. And once you do, there's not a single person alive who can stop what's coming. So when life says no, stop trying to change its mind. Instead, change your direction. Shift your energy. Redefine your path. Because sometimes rejection isn't a wall. It's a signpost. A bright, flashing light that says, wrong road. Better one ahead. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving them wrong. This is about proving yourself right. About turning rejection into resurrection. About remembering that what breaks you doesn't have to end you. Smile at every door that closes. Thank every person who doubted you. Because without them, you wouldn't have been pushed hard enough to find your true voice. And that voice? It's a storm now. Your story doesn't need approval. It needs truth. And truth doesn't beg. It roars. So the next time life says no, don't flinch. Don't fold. Smile. Stand taller. Own your redirection. Because the road you're building now, that's the one others will follow later. Rejection is just a redirection to where your soul belongs. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.